Welcome, everybody. Shiur number 613. We're learning today Le'ilei Nishmas Moshe Doiv Ben Rabban Zis Le'ilei Nishmas Blima Bas Rav Moshe. Getting back to our malacha of TZOVAYA, coloring dyeing. So we're coming towards the end. Of course, there's always a lot more to talk about. I just want to go through a few more ins and outs here and there. And see how they apply. Now, I just want to make one thing straight, that sometimes there's certain tests that have to be done on Shabbos, physical tests, urine tests, whatever the case is, changing of colors, dyeing, or the like. Obviously, these, we're not even going to begin to talk about that. Everybody has to know the situation. If it's Shailas Pekuach Nefesh, whatever, there's nothing to talk about. It's allowed to be done. Even if it's a HILCHOS SHABBOS, one has to double check with their Rav, and there's these type of things we don't want to talk about. We should all be gesund and stark, but need be, everybody should definitely consult their Rav, their own Rabbanim, in reference to these tests and these various different inyanim, because obviously there's different levels. There's Chayla She'ein Bo Sakana, there's Pekuach Nefesh. We said everything goes. That's not the question, but there are various different types of inyanim. So that everybody should consult and find out on their own situation, and of course the type of test and what's being done. Okay, but moving right along, just to the regular standard things, we're trying to finish off the malacha against TZOVAYA, dyeing. Just a quick note, he brings down the Sefer Lamites Malachis, page 747, disclosing tablets designed to cause the plaque on the teeth to change color and become visible when the tablet is chewed. I guess there's certain types of tablets whereby when they're chewed, this is not, obviously, this is not for refuah purposes, but simply thereby enabling the user to see where the teeth may still need brushing, let's say in cases which we're going to see, if one could use a dry toothbrush, or they won't have to floss or whatever, and this, by chewing this tablet, apparently it colors certain parts of the teeth, leaving over the plaque. It shows you where the plaque is, or so on. Actually, the plaque itself on the teeth change color and become visible. These type of things are also not supposed to be done. Again, we're not talking about refuahs over here. It's just simply changing color on the teeth so somebody could check and see whatever. But these things shouldn't be used on Shabbos because of the fact that the tablet produces a desirable coloring effect for the user. Right? He just brings that down. It's important to keep in mind. Now, as far as the brushing teeth, we'll get a little bit more into in the malacha of dash. But in general, just real quickly, brushing teeth on Shabbos would be allowed only without toothpaste. Again, we've been mentioning over there in the Malacha of Dash that you can't use any toothpaste, and with a dry toothbrush. Lefi Rav Moshe, it should be a separate toothbrush for Shabbos per se, but definitely you can't use any toothpaste, and the toothbrush has to be dry because of the fact of schita saris, squeezing out the toothbrush. Okay, but we'll talk a little bit more about that over there, Bezras Hashem. So that's even now. Now, as far as this using this disclosing tablet that's apparently shows off the plaque or colors the plaque on the teeth or the like, even though it's a quick thing, but even though it's temporary coloring, as we know, even temporary coloring is still would be asur midrabanan, so that can be used. Another interesting case, it brings down invisible inks. What about invisible dyes, invisible inks? Somebody might think, well, it's invisible. It's these it's like a playful type of a thing that they spill on a certain thing. It's there for a short period, or immediately it starts to fade away. Whatever case is, but all these inks and dyes may not be spilled on a garment or fabric, even though the inking effect are very temporary. It's that's the whole point of it. It's called invisible ink because of the fact that even temporary coloring, again, the same thing, even temporary coloring is not supposed to be used on Shabbos. So again, invisible inks, invisible dyes, and just these type of things. Again, we're not getting into the inyanim where certain things have to be used for refuah. That's not the issue. We're just going through some various ins and outs here and there to keep in mind. Again, it's invisible inks, invisible dyes should not be used also because of TZOVAYA. Now he brings down further, page 743, it's a coloring effect that lasts for only a fleeting moment. We spoke about the glasses that change colors when one goes outside in the sun. I think we said the name was photo gray lenses. In other words, they go outside, it changes darker color, and they come inside, it changes lighter. So we said that's nothing because of the fact that, again, it's a type of a coloring that's just a fleeting moment or for a very brief period, mamish, in and out, back and forth. So it's usually permissible. These type of things will be allowed if it occurs without any intention or need for color. So, for example, it brings some other examples that there's, of course, nothing wrong with pouring ketchup on a plate. Let's say the plate is white and somebody pours ketchup on the plate. Somebody might say, what do you mean? I'm coloring the plate. plate. So even though the plate is temporarily being colored in an area where the ketchup was poured, that's no problem. Likewise, it's perfectly permissible to affectionately pinch a child, let's say on a cheek, obviously in a nice way. Somebody goes, oh, Shein Yingala, they give a kneppel, for a child, something along those lines. It shouldn't be too hot, obviously, but let's say the cheek turns a little bit reddish. Sometimes a person might say, 1 second, I'm putting color into the cheek. That's, of course, also no problem, even though it might get a little reddish, because the coloring effect is very brief and unintentional. These are all, really nothing. If somebody takes let's say, a piece of colored paper and puts it on a light color counter, that's also no problem. These are not inyanim of dyeing or coloring. Again, it has to be for a little drop of time, not just a fleeting moment in and out, like we said, and it has to become part of the item. In other words, enhancing the surface, not where one is putting one item on top of another. That was the whole thing when we spoke about the Shabbos makeup with the, as far as dry powder on top of cheeks. But again, we spoke about that and we said everybody has to look into their own what if something has to be used, if they could use it, and talk to their own rabbanim, reference to the various different types of companies and how it's being made and so on. But just putting a piece of colored paper on top of a light surface or ketchup on a white plate, these inyanim is not a problem of coloring, and this has nothing to do with the malach of TZOVAYA. Just real quickly, we spoke about last time in reference to removing makeup. In general, the Sefer Shabbos home brings down one is permitted to remove cosmetics, like we spoke about, such as face powder, eye makeup, lipstick, nail polish from one's skin on Shabbos. However, one may not use a cream remover because applying the cream violates the malacha of smoothing, of memachek and mimarech. So you have to be careful not to put these type of cream removers. Also, somebody mentioned to me, and they have these wipies. It's like a baby wipe type of a thing. Also, in reference to removing makeup, one should not use that. Just using a regular, we mentioned last time, a clean, regular napkin, regular pre-cut paper towel. Also, when wiping the makeup, we said also that preferably not to use the cloth, because of the fact that's running into a question also, even though it's derech lichloch. I just do want to stress again, he brings on the Sefer Shabbos home also in reference to these type of urine tests and so on. Any type of bichlal, we spoke about at the beginning of the show, any type of medical test where it's a changing of a color is running into a problem of TZOVAYA, but they must talk to a Rav. Again, depending on the situations, depending on what they're doing it for, and depending on what's taking place. So obviously, everybody has to consult their own rabbanim and find out, but not just to say, well, I'm going to be machmir, and not to say I'll be mekel. They have to find out. But sometimes it's a matter of a shaila of gesund, and somebody has to do it, and sometimes it doesn't have to be done. So everybody in their own situation when it comes to taking these various types of urine tests and so on. He brings down also the Sefer Shabbos home that in case of need, one must consult with a halachic authority for guidance, and not to make these decisions on their own. So therefore, we're not going to say one way or the other on our shiurim, for sure not. Now, I do want to mention one thing which is important to keep in mind. In reference to the talcum powder, we spoke in reference that Rav Moshe was maker with that, but when it comes to the makeup, that has to be double checked. But regular talcum powder, he does bring down, does the Sefer Shabbos home. However, one is allowed to use talcum powder or baby powder on Shabbos to absorb sweat. Let's say if it's just for sweat purposes or to prevent a heat rash or diaper rash, for little babies or whatever the case is. Sometimes people use powder, it's very hot or the like. It's nothing to do with coloring over here. Just talcum powder, and it's not really refuah. They just to absorb the sweat or to prevent a rash from occurring or the like. So then this is what he brings on. However, one would be allowed to use regular talcum powder or baby powder on Shabbos to absorb the sweat, to prevent heat rash or diaper rashes. That is not a problem. The problems that come up, which we were talking about, is when it's being done for coloring. That's why there's a major difference in reference to the makeup issues and just using regular talcum powder for these other inyanim. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you for listening. Atzlach and bracha kol tov.